life is a bed slave, an alien girl's story found by a human who decides to find her. Richard Darville wiped the sweat from his brow as he made his way through the abandoned alien brothel on Nexus Station. The stale air reeked of decay and forgotten sins, but as a veteran bounty hunter, he'd learned to stomach worse. His heavy boots echoed through the empty corridors, disturbing years of dust. "Damn waste of time," he muttered, scanning the derelict establishment with his handheld detector. His latest target, a notorious arms dealer, had supposedly stashed valuable intel here before disappearing. So far, all he'd found were broken furniture and faded memories. The detector chirped as he entered what appeared to be an old private room. Unlike the others, this one still contained a bed, if you could call the strange alien furniture that. As he approached, something caught his eye, a thin metallic sheet, partially hidden beneath a loose panel in the wall. "Hello, what do we have here?" Richard carefully extracted the sheet, recognizing it as a type of alien parchment used for permanent records. The text was written in the standard galactic, but the handwriting was shaky, desperate. As he began to read, his expression hardened. "To whoever finds this, my name is Liana. I was a free woman from the Andromeda colonies. They took me 3 cycles ago, chained me here, made me serve. If you're reading this, I've either escaped or died trying. But if I live, they're taking me to..." Richard's hands tightened on the parchment as he continued reading. The woman's account was gut-wrenching. A tale of abduction, abuse, and unbroken spirit. At the end, she'd included a cryptic set of coordinates and references to her captors. "Son of a bitch," he breathed, tucking the parchment into his jacket. His original mission could wait. This Liana, this survivor, needed help, and Richard Darville had never been able to walk away from someone in need. Back on his ship, the Star Chaser, Richard pored over the parchment again. The violet-skinned woman's words painted a vivid picture of her ordeal, but more importantly, they provided clues. Her captors were part of a criminal syndicate known as the Black Lotus, specialists in trafficking exotic beings across the galaxy. "Computer, analyze these coordinates," he commanded, inputting the cryptic numbers from the parchment. Analyzing coordinates indicate the Crimson Nebula sector, specifically the mining colony of New Avalon. Richard grimaced. New Avalon was notorious, a lawless frontier world where credits bought silence and morality was considered a weakness. Perfect hiding spot for scum like the Black Lotus. He spent the next few hours making calls to his various contacts, calling in favors and gathering intel. The pieces started coming together. Reports of a secret pleasure house catering to wealthy clientele, rumors of exotic alien courtesans, and whispers of a particularly striking violet-skinned beauty. "Gotcha, bastards," he muttered, plotting a course for New Avalon. The journey would take 3 standard days. 3 days during which another soul suffered in chains. As he prepared for hyper jump, Richard reflected on his decision. He was abandoning a lucrative bounty to chase what might be a dead end. But something about Liana's words had struck a chord. Her strength, her defiance, even in captivity, it reminded him of why he'd become a bounty hunter in the first place. Not for the credits, but to make a difference. "Hold on, Liana," he whispered as the stars began to blur. "Help is coming." New Avalon lived up to its reputation. The mining colony's main settlement was a maze of neon-lit streets and dubious establishments, where the line between legitimate business and criminal enterprise blurred beyond recognition. Richard adjusted his expensive synthetic silk suit, a necessary prop for his cover as Richard Vale, a wealthy merchant from the core worlds seeking exotic entertainment. The Crimson Lotus, as the pleasure house was known locally, occupied an entire level of a towering structure in the colony's affluent district. The building's exterior sparkled with holographic flowers that bloomed and withered in an endless cycle, a gaudy display of wealth that made Richard's skin crawl. "Welcome to the Crimson Lotus, sir," purred a green-skinned Meridian at the entrance. "Do you have a reservation?" Richard flashed a credit chip. "I believe this should suffice." The hostess's eyes widened slightly at the denomination. "Of course, sir. Please follow me." The interior was a stark contrast to New Avalon's general grime, all polished surfaces and soft lighting, with private rooms branching off from a central lounge. The air was heavy with exotic incense, and subtle music played from hidden speakers. "Would sir like to meet our available companions, huh?" the hostess asked, gesturing to a holoscreen. Richard nodded, maintaining his facade of bored affluence while scanning the displayed profiles. His heart nearly stopped when he saw her, Lyanna. The image showed her violet skin gleaming under artful lighting, her long black hair arranged in elaborate braids. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. Defiant despite the circumstances, burning with an inner fire that no amount of captivity could extinguish. "That one," he said, keeping his voice steady, "the Andromedian." The hostess's expression flickered. "Ah, Lyanna is quite exclusive. Her time commands a premium." Richard pulled out another credit chip. "I didn't come to New Avalon for bargains." After a brief consultation with someone via Neuralink, the hostess smiled. "Please enjoy our premium lounge while we prepare your companion. Would you care for refreshment?" Richard accepted a glass of something blue and effervescent, using the wait to observe his surroundings. Security was subtle but present. He counted at least 3 guards disguised as servers, and the ornamental pillars likely concealed scanning equipment. When Lyanna entered, Richard nearly forgot to breathe. Her movements were graceful but measured, like a dancer performing under duress. The violet skin he'd seen in the image seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence, and her eyes, those eyes widened fractionally when she saw him, perhaps recognizing something different in his gaze. Not hunger or entitlement, but concern. "Good evening," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that the standard galactic translation couldn't quite capture. "I am Lyanna. How may I please you tonight?" Richard gestured to the space beside him on the plush seating. As she sat, he noticed the nearly invisible force field bracelet around her wrist, a sophisticated restraint that would prevent her from leaving the establishment's designated areas. "I enjoy conversation," he said carefully, aware of potential surveillance. "Tell me about yourself." A practiced smile curved her lips, but something in her expression shifted. "What would you like to know?" "Everything," he replied, letting sincerity color his tone. "Starting with how a daughter of Andromeda found herself so far from home." For the next hour, they engaged in a delicate dance of words. On the surface, it was a standard entertainment of a high-end companion amusing a wealthy client. But beneath that, they communicated through subtle cues, a tilt of the head, a particular emphasis on certain words, the briefest touch of hands. He learned that she was indeed the author of the message he'd found, that she'd been here for nearly a cycle, and that security was heaviest during shift changes. She, in turn, seemed to understand that he wasn't what he appeared to be. "Would Sir like to continue our conversation somewhere more private?" she asked eventually, following the house's protocol. In her quarters, which were luxurious but still fundamentally a cage, Lyanna moved closer to him. "You're different," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. "Why are you here?" Richard matched her quiet tone. "I found your message. I'm here to help." She stiffened slightly, hope and fear warring in her expression. "That was so long ago. I'd almost given up." "Never give up," he murmured, taking her hand. "I have a plan, but I'll need time to set it up. Can you hold on a little longer?" Lyanna's fingers tightened around his. "I've survived this long, but be careful. The House Master Therox, he's not just a brothel keeper, he's high-ranking in the Black Lotus." "I'll return tomorrow night," Richard promised. "We'll need to make it look convincing that I'm just another wealthy client who's become infatuated. It's the safest way." A genuine smile touched her lips for the first time. "And that won't be difficult to pretend." As he prepared to leave, maintaining his cover, Lyanna caught his arm. "What's your real name?" Richard Darvel." "Richard," she repeated softly. "Thank you for finding me." Back on his ship, Richard began planning in earnest. He'd need to establish a credible pattern of visits, gather intelligence on security systems, and find a way to neutralize that force field bracelet. But more than that, he needed to ensure Lyanna's safety after the rescue. The Black Lotus wouldn't let such valuable property go easily. Looking at the original parchment again, he traced the desperate words with his finger. "I found you," he whispered, "and I swear by everything I hold dear, I'm getting you out of there." Over the next week, Richard maintained his cover as the besotted merchant, visiting the Crimson Lotus nightly. Each visit strengthened his connection with Lyanna while allowing him to map the facility's security systems. However, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The House Master, Therox, a tall Centaurian with silver-scaled skin, began appearing during his visits with increasingly suspicious frequency. Tonight, as Richard entered the lounge, Therox intercepted him before he could reach his usual spot. "Mr. Vale," Therox's voice was smooth as polished chrome. "Such dedication to our establishment deserves special recognition. Would you join me in my private office?" It wasn't a request. Richard followed Therox through a hidden door, his combat instinct screaming. The office was opulent, with a view of New Avalon's perpetual twilight skyline. "Rare to see a human so captivated by one of our exotic flowers," Therox began, pouring 2 glasses of iridescent liquid, "especially one as unique as Lyanna." Richard accepted the drink but didn't taste it. "She's exceptional." "Indeed." Therox's silver eyes narrowed. "So exceptional that she's attracted the attention of several high-profile collectors. In fact, we're hosting a private auction in 3 days." Richard's grip on the glass tightened imperceptibly. "An auction?" "Yes. Exclusive invitation only, of course." Therox smiled, all teeth. "I'd extend an invitation, but your credit verification seems to have encountered some inconsistencies." The trap was springing. Richard maintained his composure, taking a calculated risk. "Perhaps we could discuss a private sale? Before the auction?" Therox's laugh was cold. "Interesting proposal, but tell me, Mr. Vale, why would a bounty hunter be interested in purchasing one of my prized possessions?" The room's atmosphere shifted instantly. 2 armed guards materialized from concealed panels, weapons trained on Richard. "Your reputation precedes you, Mr. Darville," Therox continued, "though I must admit your infiltration was impressive. Unfortunately, it ends here." Richard's mind raced. He hadn't come unprepared for this possibility, but he needed to play this carefully. "Business is business, Therox. Maybe we can make a deal." "A deal?" Therox leaned forward. "You've disrupted my operation, endangered my investment, and now you propose a deal." "I propose profit," Richard countered. "Your auction? I know buyers who'd pay double your reserve price. Legitimate buyers with clean credits that won't attract imperial attention." This caught Therox's interest. The Centaurian's facial scales rippled, a sign of consideration in his species. "Continue." "Give me access to your buyer list. I'll bring in new bidders, increase your profit margin. In return, I want a fair shot at the auction. And if you win, full price, clean credits, no questions asked." Therox studied him for a long moment. "You understand that if you attempt any heroics during the auction, Lyanna's force field bracelet has certain lethal capabilities." Richard's jaw clenched. "Understood." "Very well." Therox waved away the guards. "You have 3 days to produce these buyers. But remember, one wrong move, and neither you nor Lyanna leaves this station alive." After being escorted out, Richard rushed to his ship, his mind working overtime. He had 3 days to either raise impossible amounts of credits or devise a rescue plan that wouldn't trigger Lyanna's bracelet. But first, he needed to warn her. Returning that night under even heavier surveillance, he found Lyanna waiting in her quarters. Her eyes widened at his tense expression. "They know," she whispered, moving close under the pretense of an intimate embrace. "Yes," he murmured against her ear, "but I'm not giving up. There's an auction in 3 days." Her fingers dug into his shoulders. "The bracelet." "I know, I'm working on it." He pulled back slightly, meeting her gaze. "Do you trust me?" "With my life," she replied without hesitation. That trust hit him harder than any physical blow. Looking at her, fierce, beautiful, unbroken, despite everything, Richard knew he'd move heaven and earth to free her. 3 days were hers, he promised. "No matter what happens at that auction, you're walking out of here with me." Back on his ship, Richard activated his secure communications array. He had contacts to call, favors to collect, and a plan to formulate. The auction complicated things, but it also provided an opportunity. All the major players would be in one place. Their security focused on protecting their credits rather than their merchandise. As he worked through the night, Richard kept thinking about the parchment that had started all this. He'd found Lyanna, yes, but the real rescue was still ahead. And this time, failure wasn't an option. 2 days before the auction, Richard received the list of potential buyers. As he scrolled through the encrypted data, one name made his blood run cold. Admiral Crixus, former commander of the Drachnid fleet, Damn it all to hell, Richard muttered, memories flooding back. 3 years ago, he'd destroyed half of Crixus's smuggling operation in the Outer Rim, costing the corrupt admiral millions in illegal profits. Now the four-armed Drachnid was back, presumably for both Lyanna and revenge. Richard's ship's Aerie chirped. Analysis of Therox's security system complete. The force field bracelet control hub is located in his private quarters. Level 82. Access requires both biometric authentication and a quantum encryption key. Show me the layout, Richard commanded. A holographic blueprint materialized, highlighting Therox's quarters in red. The security was impressive. Motion sensors, heat detectors, and automated defense turrets. But there was always a way in. You just had to be crazy enough to find it. That evening, during his authorized visit with Lyanna, Richard noticed she seemed more tense than usual. As they sat in her quarters, she leaned close, her violet skin almost luminescent in the dim light. "Crixus," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "He was here earlier inspecting that merchandise. The way he looked at me?" She shuddered. Richard's protective instincts flared. "Did he touch you?" "Number house rules. No sampling before purchase." Her attempt at humor fell flat. "But he mentioned you, said something about settling old scores." "Listen carefully," Richard murmured, drawing her closer under the pretense of an intimate embrace. "Tomorrow night, during the pre-auction reception, I'm going to access Therox's quarters and disable the bracelets. When they deactivate, head for Docking Bay 7. My ship's AI will be waiting." "The security systems, leave those to me." He brushed a strand of black hair from her face, the gesture both tender and reassuring. "I've got some tricks that even Therox hasn't seen." Later that night, Richard met with an old contact in New Avalon's shadier districts. The Mechanist, as she was known, was a genius with security systems. Her workshop was a maze of half-assembled droids and scattered tech. "Biometric spoofer," she announced, holding up a thin membrane. "It'll fool the scanners into thinking you're Therox. But the quantum key?" She shook her head. "That's another story." "I've got that covered," Richard replied, producing a data crystal. Lifted it from one of his guards during a pat-down. "Just need it decoded." The Mechanist's cybernetic eye whirred as she examined the crystal. "Tricky but doable. Half my usual rate considering what you're using it for." Richard raised an eyebrow. "Please," she scoffed. "Everyone knows about the auction. Some of us remember what it's like to be property." She tapped her mechanical arm meaningfully. Back on his ship, Richard fine-tuned his plan. The pre-auction reception would be held in the Crimson Lotus's main hall, drawing security's attention. Meanwhile, he'd use the maintenance shafts to reach level 82. The real challenge would be timing. He needed to disable the bracelets during the reception, but before the auction began. A message from Therox arrived. "Your additional buyers have been verified. Most impressive. Perhaps we misjudged your value." Richard smiled grimly. The buyers were actually sophisticated AI constructs, designed to place bids and tie up the auction process. They wouldn't hold up under deep scrutiny, but they only needed to work for a few hours. The next morning, Richard received another message, this one from Crixus himself. "I look forward to reuniting with my old friend at tomorrow's event. We have so much to discuss." Attached was an image, security footage from the Outer Rim operation where Richard had destroyed Crixus's smuggling fleet. The threat was clear. During his final authorized visit with Lyanna, they maintained their cover while finalizing details. Her quarters were certainly monitored, but they'd developed a code of subtle gestures and double meanings. "I've always dreamed of seeing the stars up close," she said, running her fingers along his chest, "especially the Crimson Nebula." Translation, she'd memorized the path to Docking Bay 7. "Perhaps I'll take you there," he replied, catching her hand, "after tomorrow's festivities." Her eyes met his, filled with trust and something deeper that made his heart race. "I'll hold you to that promise." As he left the Crimson Lotus that night, Richard caught sight of Therox watching from his office window. The Centaurian raised his glass in mock salute. Beside him stood Crixus, all four arms crossed over his massive chest, mandibles clicking in anticipation. Tomorrow would determine everything. One mistake, one wrong move, and both he and Lyanna would pay with their lives. But looking up at her window, seeing her silhouette against the light, Richard knew it was worth any risk. He patted the hidden pocket containing her original parchment, the message that had started this whole adventure. Soon she'd be free to write her own story, And maybe, just maybe, he'd be part of it. The night of the auction arrived with all the subtlety of a supernova. The Crimson Lotus's main hall blazed with crystalline chandeliers, while New Avalon's perpetual twilight cast purple shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Richard adjusted his formal attire, a slim device hidden beneath his collar, the biometric spoofer that would help him access Therox's quarters. The pre-auction reception was already in full swing when he arrived. Wealthy buyers from across the galaxy mingled, their expensive clothes and jewelry competing with their exotic appearances for attention. Richard spotted Crixus immediately. The Drachnid Admiral's massive frame and four arms made him hard to miss. But something was off. Crixus seemed too relaxed, almost smug. The Admiral caught Richard's eye and raised a glass with one of his four hands, mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among his species. "Quite a gathering, isn't it?" a melodious voice said beside him. Richard turned to find a stunning Cyrene female, her crystalline skin refracting light like a prism. "I'm Vena, representing the pleasure guilds of Arcturus." One of his AI constructs, Richard realized. The mechanist's programming was flawless. Even he could barely tell it wasn't real. "Richard Vale," he replied, maintaining his cover. "Independent interests." "Oh, we know exactly what interests you," Vena purred, her crystalline form shifting colors subtly. "The Andromedian girl has quite captured your attention." Warning bells rang in Richard's mind. The AI constructs weren't programmed for such specific knowledge. Before he could react, Vena's form flickered, a holographic disguise dissolving to reveal one of Crixus's officers. "Surprised," he whispered, pressing something cold against his ribs. A neural disruptor, no doubt. Across the room, Crixus was already moving toward the private elevator to Therox's quarters. The bastard had known about his plan all along. "Move!" the officer commanded, steering him toward a side door. Richard complied, mind racing. His original plan was compromised, but that didn't mean he was out of options. As they passed a serving droid, he deliberately stumbled, bumping into it. The droid's tray clattered to the floor. "Sorry," Richard slurred, playing drunk. "Too much of that blue stuff." The officer yanked him upright, momentarily distracted. It was enough. Richard drove his elbow back, catching her in the solar plexus. The neural disruptor clattered away as she doubled over. He finished her with a precise strike to the neck, catching her before she hit the floor and dragging her behind a decorative column. But precious minutes had been lost. Crixus was surely in Therox's quarters by now, probably disabling the very security systems Richard had planned to exploit. He needed a new plan. Fast. The maintenance shaft was out. It would be the first place they'd look. Instead, Richard headed for the external elevator, used by cleaning droids to wash the building's windows. His encrypted keycard, courtesy of the mechanist, gave him access. As the platform rose along the building's glass exterior, Richard contacted his ship's AI. "New plan. Monitor all communications from Therox's quarters. I need to know what Crixus is up to." "Scanning," the AI replied. "Detecting encrypted transmissions. Decoding." "Sir, they're moving up the auction. It starts in 15 minutes. Richard cursed. The auction chamber was on level 80, just below Therox's quarters. They were forcing his hand. Either go for the control hub or try to buy Lyanna's freedom legitimately. A message flashed across his retinal display. "Looking for something?" It was from Crixus, accompanied by an image of the force field control hub, clearly visible in Therox's office. Another message followed. "Come alone. We have matters to discuss." It was obviously a trap, but it was also his only chance to reach the controls. Richard guided the cleaning platform to level 82's external access hatch. The biometric spoofer might still work on the door if Crixus hadn't already changed the security protocols. To his surprise, the hatch opened easily. Too easily, Richard drew his concealed blade, a thin ceramic composite that had passed the establishment's weapon scanners. Therox's quarters were dark, lit only by the city's eternal twilight filtering through the windows. Crixus stood by the control hub, all four arms relaxed at his sides. "You've lost your touch, Darvel," the Admiral rumbled. "Time was, you'd have spotted my agent immediately." "Maybe I'm just getting predictable in my old age," Richard replied, edging closer. "What's your play here, Crixus? Revenge? Or is this about profits?" "Neither." Crixus's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "This is about potential. The girl, She's not what you think she is." "What are you talking about?" "Her species. They're unique, compatible with humans in ways that defy genetic logic. The offspring of such unions possess remarkable abilities. The Black Lotus has been conducting experiments." "She's not an experiment," Richard growled. "She's a person worth a fortune to the right buyers," Crixus agreed. "But I'm willing to make you an offer. Join us. Your skills, combined with our resources, we could build an empire." Richard pretended to consider it, taking another step toward the control hub. "Interesting proposal. Just one problem." "Oh, I don't make deals with slavers." Richard threw his blade not at Crixus, but at the control hub. The ceramic composite pierced the delicate machinery, sending sparks flying. Simultaneously, he dove behind a massive desk as Crixus roared in fury. The Admiral's natural weapons, retractable claws and poison spines, were supposedly deadlier than any manufactured weapon. Richard was about to find out if the rumors were true, but he had one advantage Crixus didn't know about. The moment his blade hit the control hub, a signal had been sent to his ship's AI. Throughout the Crimson Lotus, every security system was about to go haywire. The Crimson Lotus erupted into chaos. Emergency lights strobed crimson through the darkness as security systems went haywire. Force field doors activated randomly, splitting the auction chamber into a maze of deadly energy barriers. Wealthy patrons screamed and scattered as defense turrets emerged from the walls, their targeting systems confused by Richard's virus. In Therox's quarters, Richard rolled behind a massive crystalline sculpture as Crixus's poison spines shattered the space where he'd been standing. The Drachnid Admiral moved with surprising grace for his size, all four arms working in lethal coordination. "You've doomed her, you know," Crixus snarled, mandibles clicking furiously. "Even if you escape, the Black Lotus will never stop hunting their prize specimen." Richard didn't waste breath responding. Instead, he triggered the second phase of his plan. Throughout the building, every environmental control system activated simultaneously. Fog like coolant filled the corridors, while the fire suppression system created a deafening deluge. Using the confusion, Richard vaulted over the sculpture, ducking under Crixus's swing and sprinting for the door. He needed to reach Lyanna before Therox's security could regroup. 2 levels below, Lyanna was already moving. The moment her force field bracelet had deactivated, she'd known Richard had succeeded. Now, wearing the elegant auction outfit that had been prepared for her presentation, she navigated the chaos of the auction chamber. A security guard appeared through the mist, weapon raised. Lyanna didn't hesitate. Years of captivity had taught her patience, but her people's natural agility had never left her. She flowed around his clumsy grab, using his own momentum to send him sprawling. "Stop her!" Therox's voice boomed through the chamber. "The Andromedian must not escape!" Lyanna's violet skin seemed to shimmer in the emergency lighting as she vaulted over a malfunctioning force field barrier. Her bare feet made no sound on the polished floor. They'd planned to auction her off like this, displayed like exotic artwork. Now that same presentation outfit allowed her to move with preternatural grace. Richard burst through the auction chamber's main doors, immediately spotting Lyanna through the chaos. Their eyes met across the room, and in that moment, everything else faded away. Then reality crashed back as Crixus's guards opened fire. "Down!" Richard shouted, diving toward her. They rolled behind an overturned serving table as energy bolts scorched the air above them. "Took you long enough," Lyanna said, her smile fierce and free for the first time since he'd met her. "Traffic was hell," he replied, checking his stolen neural disruptor. "Ready to get out of here?" "I've been ready for 3 years." They moved as one, Richard providing covering fire, while Lyanna led them toward the emergency stairwell. Her intimate knowledge of the building's layout, gained through years of restricted movement within it, now proved invaluable. Behind them, Crixus's roar of fury echoed through the chamber. The Admiral had recovered from their earlier encounter, and the sound of his pursuit drove them faster. "The main stairs will be blocked," Lyanna said as they reached a junction. "There's a service lift through the Kit Matheson." "Lead the way." They burst into the Kit Matheson, startling the staff who'd been huddling in confusion. Richard grabbed a pot of boiling liquid from the stove, hurling it at the door as Crixus's guards appeared. Their screams bought precious seconds. The service lift was tiny, meant for food deliveries. They squeezed in together, Lyanna's body pressed against his in the confined space. Despite the danger, despite everything, Richard was acutely aware of her presence, her strength, her indomitable spirit. "Richard," she said softly as the lift descended. "If we don't make it—" He cut her off with a finger to her lips. "We're making it. I didn't come this far to fail now." The lift shuddered to a halt at the loading dock level. They could hear weapons fire and shouting from above, Tharok's security fighting Crixus's guards as the two factions turned on each other. "Docking Bay 7 is through the maintenance tunnel," Richard said, checking the corridor. "My ship's AI has already—" A massive explosion rocked the building, throwing them both against the wall. Through the loading dock's windows, they saw a security shuttle crash into one of the upper floors. Crixus's backup plan, no doubt. "Run!" Richard grabbed Lyanna's hand, and they sprinted for the maintenance tunnel. Behind them, they could hear the Admiral's distinctive heavy footsteps getting closer. The tunnel seemed endless, their footsteps echoing off metal walls as they ran. Lyanna's bare feet should have been torn apart by the rough flooring, but her species' natural resilience proved its worth. Finally, they burst into Docking Bay 7. Richard's ship sat ready, engines humming, ramp extended. They were halfway there when Crixus emerged from the tunnel, all four arms wielding weapons. "The experiments must continue," the Admiral roared. "The potential of your combined genetics—" "Oh, shut up!" Lyanna said, and threw herself into a spinning kick that caught the surprised Drachnid in what passed for his chin. The Admiral staggered, giving Richard the opening he needed to fire the neural disruptor directly into Crixus's center mass. They didn't wait to see him fall. Running up the ramp, they collapsed into the ship's cockpit as the AI initiated emergency launch procedures. "Hold on," Richard warned as they blasted out of the bay, artificial gravity struggling to compensate for their desperate escape velocity. Through the viewport, they watched the Crimson Lotus recede, its upper floors now engulfed in flames from the crashed shuttle. Somewhere in there, Tharok was probably already planning his revenge. But for now, they were free. Lyanna's hand found his as they broke atmosphere. "Where to now?" Richard pulled out the worn parchment that had started everything. "Anywhere you want. The galaxy's a big place, and you've got a lot of living to catch up on." She looked at him, violet eyes shining with possibilities. "We've got a lot of living to catch up on." As New Avalon shrank behind them, Richard smiled. She was right. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. For 3 weeks, Richard and Lyanna zigzagged across the galaxy, staying one step ahead of their pursuers. They hopped between remote outposts and hidden safe houses, never staying in one place long enough to leave a trace. Throughout their journey, their bond deepened, forged in the crucible of shared danger and quiet moments of understanding. The Star Chaser's AI had plotted a course to a remote sanctuary world called Haven, known for its policy of absolute discretion. As they approached the planet's atmosphere, Lyanna stood at the viewport, watching the swirling purple clouds that reminded Richard of her skin. "It's beautiful," she whispered, pressing her hand against the transparent barrier. "I'd almost forgotten what freedom felt like." Richard moved to stand beside her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her body. "How are you holding up?" She turned to face him, her violet eyes reflecting starlight. "I keep expecting to wake up back there, to find this was all a dream." Her hand found his, fingers intertwining naturally. "But you're real. This is real." The tension between them had been building gradually, an electric current that grew stronger with each passing day. Every accidental touch, every shared glance, every quiet conversation in the ship's small living quarters had added to the charge. "Lyanna," Richard began, his voice rough with emotion, "I need you to know something. What I feel for you. It's not just about the rescue or protecting you. It's—" She silenced him with a finger to his lips, just as he had done during their escape. "I know," she said softly. "I feel it too." Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, an exploration of trust as much as desire. When they parted, both were breathing heavily, and the stars seemed to spin around them. Haven proved to be exactly what they needed, a pristine world of crystalline beaches and bioluminescent forests. They found a secluded cottage on the coast, far from the planet's few settlements. For the first time since their escape, they could truly relax. Days passed in a blur of discovery, both of their new sanctuary and of each other. They walked barefoot on beaches that sparkled like diamonds, swam in waters that glowed with alien life, and spent long evenings talking about everything and nothing. Their physical relationship evolved naturally, without pressure or expectations. Liana's past experiences had left scars, but Richard's patience and genuine care helped her heal. They took things slowly, building trust through small intimacies. A caress here, a kiss there, each touch freely given and received. One night, as they lay together watching Haven's 3 moons rise over the ocean, Liana spoke of her people's beliefs about love and union. "Among my kind, joining with another is considered a merging of souls," she explained. "It's not just physical. It's a spiritual bond that transcends the material." Richard listened, fascinated by the depth of her culture's understanding. When they finally came together intimately, it was with full awareness of what it meant to both of them. Not just an act of passion, but a declaration of trust, love, and commitment. Weeks turned into months, and their love grew stronger. They established a routine, taking turns monitoring their security systems while building a life together. Richard taught Liana about human customs and traditions, while she shared the rich cultural heritage of her people. It was during one of their morning swims that Liana first felt different. At first, she dismissed it as adjustment to Haven's slightly stronger gravity, but as days passed, the changes became more noticeable. "Richard," she said one evening as they sat watching the sunset, "remember what Crixus said about human and Andromedan compatibility?" He tensed slightly at the mention of the Admiral's name. "What about it?" "I think—" She took his hand and placed it on her abdomen. "I think he was right about some things." Richard's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Are you saying—" She nodded, a mix of joy and uncertainty in her expression. "I'm carrying our child." The news hit him like a gravity wave, and powerful, overwhelming, and absolutely transformative. He gathered her in his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "Both of you." But even as they celebrated this miracle, they knew their peaceful sanctuary couldn't last forever. The Black Lotus wouldn't stop hunting them, especially now. Their child would be living proof of what Crixus had claimed, the unique compatibility between their species. "We'll protect our family," Richard promised, his hand still resting protectively over their growing child. "Whatever it takes." Liana smiled, her violet skin seeming to glow in the fading light. "Together," she agreed, "we're stronger together." As night fell over Haven, they held each other close, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for now, in this moment, they had everything they'd ever dreamed of. Freedom, love, and the promise of a future neither of them had dared to imagine. The message arrived on a quantum-encrypted channel that even the Star Chaser's AI took hours to decode. When it finally cleared, Richard and Liana found themselves staring at the stern face of Imperial Commander Abigail Matheson. "Mr. Darvel," she began, "we've been monitoring your situation. The Black Lotus has become too bold, too dangerous. We're prepared to help you eliminate them. Permanently." Richard felt Liana tense beside him. At 5 months pregnant, her violet skin had taken on an ethereal glow, and their bond had grown even stronger through their intimate moments together. He squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Why now?" he asked. "Because they've crossed a line. We've discovered they're experimenting with forced breeding programs across multiple species." What they did to Liana wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pilot program. The commander's words hung heavy in the air. Liana's free hand moved protectively to her swollen abdomen, where their child, a miracle of love, not experimentation, grew stronger each day. "What's the plan?" Richard asked. "We've located their primary research facility. With your help, we can end this. But we need to move fast before your condition becomes public knowledge." The choice was clear. They could hide on Haven forever, always looking over their shoulders, or they could fight for their future, and the futures of countless others. The Imperial Strike Force assembled in deep space, far from prying eyes. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. While the Imperial ships engaged the Black Lotus's outer defenses, Richard and Liana would lead a small team to infiltrate the facility. Their intimate knowledge of the organization's operations made them the perfect spearhead. The night before the mission, they lay together in their quarters aboard the Imperial flagship. Their lovemaking was tender, almost reverent, each touch a promise, each kiss a prayer for tomorrow. No matter what happens, Lyanna whispered in the darkness, finding that parchment was the best thing that ever happened to you. Richard smiled against her skin. Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me. The assault began at dawn, ship time. The Imperial fleet dropped out of hyperspace like avenging angels, their weapons lighting up the void. While the main force engaged the Black Lotus ships, Richard and Lyanna's infiltration team slipped through the chaos in a stealth shuttle. They found Crixus in the heart of the facility, surrounded by research data and genetic samples. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in amusement when he saw them. "The prodigal specimens return," he sneered. "Come to validate our research?" "No," Lyanna said, her voice steady. "We've come to end it." The fight was brutal but brief. Crixus's 4 arms gave him an advantage in close combat, but he hadn't counted on the fierce protectiveness of a mother defending her unborn child. While Richard kept the Admiral's attention, Lyanna circled behind him and delivered a precise strike to a nerve cluster unique to Drachnid physiology, knowledge she'd gained during her captivity. As Crixus fell, Richard uploaded the Imperial virus that would destroy the Black Lotus's research and financial networks. Simultaneously, Commander Matheson's forces breached the facility's defenses. The organization that had caused so much suffering began to crumble. 5 years later, the Haven sunrise painted the crystalline beaches in shades of purple and gold as Richard watched his son, Nixus, practice levitation, a unique ability inherited from his mixed heritage. The boy's skin was a lighter shade of violet than his mother's, and his eyes held the same determined glint as his father's. "Higher, Papa," Nixus laughed, floating a few feet off the ground. "Watch me." Lyanna emerged from their beachside home, her hand resting on her slightly swollen belly. Their second miracle was due in a few months. She wrapped her arms around Richard from behind, and he turned to kiss her. "Still no regrets?" she asked, a teasing lilt in her voice. Richard pulled out the worn parchment he still carried, her original message, now framed and preserved. "Best treasure hunt of my life," he replied. They had built something beautiful here on Haven. After the fall of the Black Lotus, the Imperial authorities had officially recognized their union, establishing a precedent for human Andromedan relationships. Their story had become something of a legend, inspiring others to fight against exploitation and trafficking across the galaxy. But more importantly, they had built a family. Nixus was growing into an extraordinary child, blessed with both his mother's natural grace and his father's adventurous spirit. Their second child, according to the medical scans, would be a girl. "Tell me the story again," Nixus called, floating back to them. "About how you found Mama." Richard scooped up his son, while Lyanna leaned against him. "Well, it all started when I found a mysterious message in an abandoned brothel." As he recounted their tale, carefully edited for young ears, Richard marveled at how a single piece of parchment had changed everything. Their love had transcended boundaries, overcome dangers, and created something entirely new and wonderful. The parchment that had started it all now hung in their home, a reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures aren't found in ancient ruins or distant planets, but in the hearts brave enough to reach for them. "And they lived happily ever after?" Nixus asked, as he always did. Richard looked at Lyanna, saw the love shining in her violet eyes, felt the warmth of their family surrounding him. "Yes," he said, "they absolutely did.